Hello, everyone. This is Tom Fox. Welcome back for another episode. I'm absolutely thrilled today to have with me Alyssa Borden. Alyssa and I are both members of the C-Suite Thought Council. We've met in that arena, and she's got some great things going on. I asked her if she would come on the pod, and she graciously agreed to do so. Alyssa, with that incredibly long-winded introduction, first of all, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so grateful to be here.
Alyssa, could you tell us a little bit about your professional background?
Yes. So, my background is in HR, generally as an HR business partner. So, I've been embedded in a variety of different industries, supporting generally finance, IT, marketing, HR, other shared services teams for companies that are both startups and all the way up to global manufacturing companies. I recently went out on my own to start my new entrepreneurial adventure, which is called SuccessBridge. And my goal is to help take some of those lessons that I learned from working within those teams and developing my own skills, seeing wins and failures within these large companies, and bring them to others so that they can build out their teams and drive really strategic people processes.
So, what are some of the key transformation or strategic issues that either you're counseling your clients on today, or perhaps even they're asking you literally since we had a change in administration?
Oh gosh, so many things, right? I think some of the biggest challenges are what technologies should we be using and when? And then how do we get our people on board and integrate these things into our processes? So there's kind of a balance. There's this changing expectation in the workplace and this changing value proposition between what employees expect and what employers expect. That's natural, right? The landscape is always changing, but that really affects people's readiness to embrace new structures and processes within their own businesses.
Do you see this as a time for opportunity then?
Oh, yes, absolutely. I think the future is bright. I get very excited about these things. If you can't tell, every challenge presents a new opportunity, right? And the more that we communicate and share with each other and have these conversations, the more that we can see that we're not in this alone and there are paths.
So, tell us a little bit about Success Bridge.
SuccessBridge is really focused on helping clients develop the different people strategies necessary to change their business. Now, some of those changes are just continuous improvement, taking those values that you have on the wall and putting them into reality. Others are really big and transformational, perhaps adopting new technologies or restructuring your organization. Where we try to differentiate ourselves is that we really embed with the teams to come up with custom solutions. I'm a big believer that there is no one size fits all. Anyone who's selling you that should ask them some more questions, right? These companies are complex, they're unique, and the people within them equally. So the solutions that we try to provide are customized to our clients and can range anywhere from workforce design to developing digital upskilling programs.
A little known fact is I have a master's degree in HR, although I got that degree in 1980. Things have changed somewhat. And I'm not sure where to begin. Should we begin at the pandemic? Should we begin with the generations in the workplace? What are some of the biggest changes that you have seen? And I'll follow whatever you wherever you want to start it.
Oh gosh, I'm so excited to hear that about your background because in the end, people are people, right? And so many things haven't changed. I think it's just we continually grow and build wisdom as we test new things. So for me, there are some generational differences, but I try to take the generation out of it and instead focus more on people just have different expectations in the workforce. And there is a drive toward autonomy, right? I want to be able to be trusted to do my work, to do the things that I want to do. And more people are have this entrepreneurial spirit. I think it's built in the society around us and encouraged in society around us. So that really changes what people are looking for within their own jobs with an employer. And for employers to try to figure out how do you allow that type of job crafting or different ways of hiring with maybe fractional work or others that maybe we didn't do in the past. What do you think about that?
I have worked for myself for 15 years, so I think that probably tells you all you need to know about how I view such matters. But I talked to my daughter a lot, who's 27, and her expectations are very different than mine. And so I was really intrigued by your approach, which is not to focus on the difference in our expectations, but to find out what our expectations are. So since 2010, and I wish I had trademarked this phrase, I've worked from home. And I love working from home, and I'm incredibly efficient and productive working from home. At 27, she wants to be in an office. She wants to be around other people. She wants that collaborative approach where she can bounce ideas off people. And so she changed jobs so she could literally go to the office because that's what she wants. And it's also her expectation to make her more productive. So what I heard you say was don't focus on the differences, find out what the expectations are, and then work to meet those expectations.
Yeah, exactly. Like, why try to hold back a wave with your hands? Instead, think about the what ifs. What are the things that this person is asking for? And why am I automatically saying no? Or why do I think it can't be possible? I think there's a lot, it's just in our brains, it's built into our DNA to challenge and just try to maintain what we always knew. And the reality is, to your point, each employer is different and has a different value proposition. So if they're looking for the right people for the right role and then they can meet those expectations, there's a lot to be gained. It doesn't have to necessarily be the same for every job because every job is different. Some require in person. I'm like your daughter. I wanted to be in person in my last corporate job. Not only did I help organize the return to the office into a new office for our corporate headquarters, but I asked to be there 4 or 5 days a week. It's just what fulfills me and how I found that I got my work done better. But that doesn't mean that my way works for everybody and that others can't be productive in other ways. And I think employers and HR teams can get creative, right? And find that way to meet those needs.
Let me change the focus just a little bit. The majority of the audience for this podcast are corporate compliance professionals. So obviously, they have a huge role in interacting with HR. But I'm going to go way back to World War II because my father, who fought in World War II, came out of World War II, and he came out of it not of as so much of an advocate for democracy, but he came out of it as an advocate for the working man and institutional justice and institutional fairness in the form of arbitration under a labor agreement. And he became an arbitrator because he thought the working man should have fairness and justice if they're terminated. So that I've heard that all my life. And that was a part of the things I heard when I got my HR degree. In the 2020s, the Department of Justice began to say that a corporate compliance officer or CCO should be the holder of institutional justice and institutional fairness in an organization. Whereas hopefully people will understand with my background, I thought HR held that. Do you see any dichotomy there, or can those two corporate functions collaborate to ensure the corporation has institutional justice and institutional fairness for its employees?
Oh, wow. That's a great question. And it's a heavy burden. That is a lot for one department or one person to carry. So I'm of the belief that a workplace is an ecosystem. And while we all have distinct ownership and having clear decision rights and accountability is critically important, right? So that things move forward. But compliance and HR, I just don't see how they couldn't be connected, right? Because HR ultimately is responsible for people, and people are one of the greatest spends in an organization. An organization really can't win without them. So for the compliance policies to stick, right? And for people to buy into them, I think there's this natural collaboration that can be built between those groups so that rather than fighting against each other, they're partnering to have a strategic plan to make sure that it sticks and it applies to the work and the people are living it day to day and how they manage, how they drive performance, the expectations, and ultimately how do you hire? Because if you hire people who don't understand the whys of compliance, you're going to be fighting an uphill battle all the time.
That's a great point. Let me pick up on that on the hire because I have advocated for at least 10, maybe 15 years that HR has more employee touch points and their touch points before they become employees. And it starts with the hiring process. It starts with the review of the resume, but it moves to either your initial conversation. And it will also be a part of if a candidate moves up the ladder for additional interviews, it can be a part of the conversation at every touch point. And we haven't even got to hiring and onboarding yet, where hopefully it's discussed as well. Could you talk about how HR can use those touch points to really not so much influence people, but really, as you said, transmit those values, corporate values before they even become an employee?
Oh gosh, yes. There's so much involved in that, creating that employer brand and then making sure that it's authentic to reality. So I don't know about you, but I had experiences in the past where the way an organization was presented to me, either through initial interviews or their websites, didn't really align with the answers to the questions that I was getting or information you can find from reviews and things online. And I've always been puzzled by it because while HR is responsible for finding and attracting those great people that are critical to moving the work forward, a great person isn't a great person if they don't fit with the environment and the environment isn't ready for their skills, right? Or their approach. So HR has to represent the reality of the organization and be prepared, I think, to explain the why. Of course, do it with a positive tone. You're promoting your business. You should be out promoting, but being transparent where things aren't what that person may be used to, and then explaining why it's valuable or what they can get from it. I think there's just so much more that can happen in those early sales conversations, for lack of a better term, that could help save time and ensure better alignment so that when that person does make it through and all the stars align, they're on the right track, they know what they got into, and then they can really quickly implement a plan to become a part of the organization and do the things that they were hired to do. But HR has to know the business to do that. And that, I'm sure you've seen, can sometimes be a challenge. They're busy, they're under resourced, maybe they're undervalued. Leaders may not understand that HR can be strategic because maybe they've never seen it before. HR has to have the business acumen, know what's happening in their teams so that they can accurately relay that to the people they're trying to attract.
Let's turn to the balancing of technology, people, and processes. And why do you see organizations struggle with over reliance on technology, even in the HR function?
It could be a shiny object issue. The reality is that oftentimes the issues we're trying to solve with technology are really large and complex and have probably been going on and being built over a really long time. So the idea of a quick win or an easy button is really alluring. And I think sometimes what happens is we see the technology, we see the possibilities that it brings, but we forget that it's a tool and an accelerator. It has to be applied to something, right? In order to maximize the impact that it could have. So if the foundation and the soil aren't steady, you can build the fanciest house you want on top, right? The house still won't be steady by default. There are a few things I think that I've seen happen over the years. One is that sometimes the leaders driving the decisions don't have the technical acumen to really challenge the readiness for the tool, or maybe the technical leaders who do in the org don't have the right seat at the table. So there's just an empowerment and communication challenge there. There's also, as I mentioned, kind of this well-intentioned hope, right? We want to make difficult problems easy. That's just it can lead to under-resourcing and lack of investment in something that can ultimately lead to disengagement or lack of adoption. And then finally, buy-in. If the team is involved in selecting the technology and making it work, you'll have a really hard time getting them to buy in and understand what's in it for them. So any technical solution to reach its potential needs to have adoption and people learning it and understanding it along the way.
How about some of the best practices for actually integrating this together? And I'm always intrigued by the phrase "a human in the loop" that a lot of AI people will use. But is there a way to for HR to take advantage of an AI-based technology, yet keeping that human touch point?
Oh, yes, absolutely. In fact, I would challenge folks to think about what are the things that remain. So while the technology may disrupt skills or jobs, what are those key things that it will create or enhance? For example, different critical thinking skills are absolutely necessary for that human to be in the loop. AI doesn't know what you know. It has access to a lot of different information, but it doesn't have that in person context. So, what you can bring to it really helps it reach its full potential. So, understanding context and verbiage, how to communicate and connect with people in real time. Things like that are really important. And that, I think, is the trick. You have to bring people on really soon rather than waiting for it to happen naturally or assuming that they'll just get it. Right? You have to be willing to be humble and share where you don't know, right? The answers to things, give people ownership and accountability, right? So that they have the purpose and they understand why this technology is so important, how it helps them personally, and how it helps the organization. So, displaying confidence in their ability to learn and grow, I think, is a really big way to get buy in rather than comments like, we don't have the skills here, or we're going to go hire someone to do this. That doesn't inspire your team. The skills you need are in house. You just have to invest in building them and be clear about who makes the decisions along the way.
So let's turn to maybe vision and reality. In the compliance world, we used to try to have a game plan or map out 1, 3, and 5 years down the road. I'm not sure we can map that far out down the road, but how does HR is it simply in a reactive mode right now because things are changing so quickly, or is there a process you can put in place to at least help you assess or manage that change?
Oh gosh, it probably depends on the person between that proactive or not, or the company and what is involved. But my solution would be assume it will always change. Assume you will never know. That to me is the best way to armor yourself, no matter what function you're in. I've seen so many teams put years sometimes into perfecting roadmaps and protecting visions and doing all this analysis to run it through approvals and bureaucratic chains. In the meantime, every minute that was spent on that was spent not actually doing. Right. So a really good way, I think, to manage that disconnect is to set an expectation with people that we're going to be iterative. We're going to try things and we're going to learn along the way. Get as close as you can to that aspirational vision, but build in principles, right? So that when things change, you're focusing more on the principle and less on whether or not you checked a box on a road.
I have heard multiple people over the past couple of years say something along the lines of the following. The true corporate differentiator in 5 years will be in talent acquisition and talent retention. It doesn't matter how great AI may or may not be. It doesn't matter how much tech you have. It's going to be the talent that manages that tech. How do you advocate a company retain talent and also upskill that talent to meet the next round of challenges, whatever that might be?
It is interesting because as technology takes away some of that more tactical work that we all love to hate, right? We've all got it. What it does is challenges people to bring their true unique skills, knowledge, and experience that they were hired for to the table as a bigger part of their job. And that's just a different way of working, right? Not all of us get that. There are always those things, right, that take up the time. And as those are eliminated, I think really ensuring that leadership understands the cost, right, of not having that talent and the value of it. So you can't wait to upskill, right? Retaining the right people is critically important. But you have to understand first and take an assessment of who are those people in my team? Do I know that? Right? Do I know who has the capability to transfer skills or build something new? But in the end, employees want to know their path. They want to know that there's opportunity and they want to feel supported in doing it, not just getting fancy speeches and things from above and beautiful PowerPoints. So, to reskill, you have to do it urgently and just build it into your culture and expectations, not just as an HR theory, but leaders are willing to, for example, release their employee for a development project to go rotate to another team and then be willing to take on someone new and train them. Be willing to take chances on folks and trust them that they will rise to the task. I think people will. We always have. It wasn't that long ago, really, that Excel was some fancy new tool that revolutionized accounting, right? It didn't exist. It was mainly done on paper, right? And pencil. And now I was like, oh, don't touch me on Excel. That's so old. Those things have always been happening. We've survived through it before. So helping people connect with that and just being realistic about what we hired them for. Okay, if we didn't hire them for that skill and they didn't know it, we can't assume they have it. Fine, invest in it, teach them, and make sure that they have the time to do.
So let me pivot a little bit and ask you about SuccessBridge and how do you help clients both have a strategic vision, but execute on that at the tactical level? Do you, or just maybe walk us through your process for that?
Yeah. So, firstly, I don't promise my customers a magical one size fits all solution to their talent related needs. As we talked about, this is really complex. There's a lot of components here and it's always changing. I think I've seen people invest in these types of sales pitches before and not get the return on their investment. So, the first thing I do is really try to understand and assess the unique needs. What is that leader trying to do? Where is the company at in terms of their readiness for this project? And try to drive down to the root causes. What are those things really driving the problems, right? Behind the scenes. And then one thing that really sets my approach and SuccessBridge's approach apart is embedding with the team. I don't believe that without bringing teams along, talking to them, and serving as a conduit between them and their leadership, you can really get to those good results and solve the right problems at the right time. So, the best result for me when I leave a project is that the team is in a better place than they were before. They understand new systems and processes, they built some new skills, and now they can carry that forward within their own company and customize it. And then I can go and help that next company build the structures that they need to move forward. But you're right, there is a balance, right, of big vision and minor task. Uh, to me, it really comes down to the organization's readiness and the people who are available to help support those initiatives internally and carry them forward.
Alyssa, unfortunately, we are near the end of our time for this episode. But before we leave, I wanted to ask you if any of our listeners wanted to connect with you, find out more about SuccessBridge, or really any of the topics we've touched on, what might be the best place or places for them to go?
Thank you. Yeah, I think LinkedIn is still the best place for me. I'm very active. If they want to learn more about the things that we do, they can send me a message or find me at Alyssa Borden at LinkedIn, or SuccessBridge has a page as well where you can reach out there. I can also be reached at Alyssa at successbridge.net.
Alyssa, I wanted to thank you again for taking the time to visit with me, and I hope we can continue this conversation.
Yeah, me too. Thank you so much. This has been really fun.